But these sons whom he begot himself, great heaven used to call Titans or strainers in reproach, for he said that they strained and did presumptuously a fearful deed, and that vengeance for it would come afterwards. So I interpret this as it's written that the strain or stress of the language comes after, right? So it's like likewise we see this in naming conventions as well, right? So convention, right? It ends in tion, and we see this tion ending a lot, right? It comes at the end. Hesiod says the psychopes have eyes on the middle of their heads, right? And this mesos is middle, and it's located in the space between their eyes, the metopon, whereas the Titans are named so because vengeance would come afterwards, and its afterwards is metopiste. It means like from behind, backwards, right? And it's like the story of the Tower of Babylon, that God adds words and he makes words kind of like backwards or confusing to people to stress them. I'd argue we understand the Titans as this ending tion in invention or intention. We have sion, and it's interesting that sion is kind of like Zion, right? Zion is zion. So this metopiste, or afterwards, could be the end like of an era, or it's like a period grammatically. It ends the sentence, or it could just be this like stress or tension that you add at the end of how we say words, right? They're also called the strainers in that they create, right? They're called strainers. They stretch, they create out of the clay, like from the Sumerian poem Enki and Nima. So physically, what is strain? Like what when you say strain, can you define it by physics? So yes, it's to apply tension to a solid, right? To pull on both ends. Well, you deform something or you make it flow, right? This material or solid, you stretch it. A material, when you shape it, right? When you make clay, you pinch it between your fingers, right? You stretch it out, or like you roll dough. So yeah, like Enki and Nima, they're working with clay and they strain it, and this would be the deformation of the ceramic materials, right, into the forms for practical uses of this like Bronze Age and Neolithic society, right? Pottery and other kinds of like earthen materials. It's like how you build your houses and all kinds of practical stuff. But it could also be that you're adding on to words, right? Because as technology progresses, you have to add, right? The language becomes more complex, and you got to add these new endings, or maybe how the words are said, like these tenses. So, for example, the word telephone, right? It adds phone onto tele, and these are both separate words, but they like together they make a new word, right? And they become like a new. We attach symbols to it and stuff. So again, it could be just like the stress on the end of the word itself to add on to the afterwards, right? And that the vengeance comes afterwards, it says. So Titans, well, Titans means stress, strain, or tension, I'd imagine. And this is important because when we look at the Titanomachy, right, the Titan War is like this tension machine or tension battle that Zeus wins, right, to overthrow Cronus, or this everlasting time. Much the same as we think of the Titans today, right? These Titans of industries, they're the ones who make these technological progress, and we have to invent new words, right? Like apple is more synonymous now than the fruit itself, right? Steve Jobs, he used this on purpose, right? He glommed onto this word apple. Apple is it goes all the way down to the Bible, right? Like Adam and Eve, that we know apple as like the symbol of the fruit, right? He used it for marketing, right? It's like one of the first words too in the phone book and stuff like that. And then this technology spurs all our new words, right? Like Spanish. Spanish is becoming like English. There's a computadora, telefono, right? All these languages just will become one, right? They eventually could become one. And that it's kind of like, again, like the Tower of Babel. And then eventually new technology will come, and then maybe or there'll be a war, and that's what's gonna create new languages and like ethnicities and nations. So the Titanomachy, or the Titan War, could be the mixing or the extrusion stage of a material. So like Zeus, we could say Zeus is like the miller, or it's like he grinds stuff up, right? And then the Titan War could be like the kneading or the rolling and the shaping of the dough, right? Because it's when they talk about the Titans, they stretch stuff out, right? They stretch the clay, they stretch the dough. What was the Titan War? Well, it was a war for power, right? What is power? Power is work per time. Work is in units of energy, and time is time. It's seconds. So what is work? What is energy? Work or energy is force times distance. It's pushing or carrying something over a distance. That takes work or energy, and that's how we know, like horsepower is like how much can a horse pull, right? For how much in over a second. So if you carry the weight a distance over a period of time, right? It's force times distance divided by time. That's power, right? It's this output of power. So from Hesiod's Theogony. And Styx, the daughter of Ocean, was joined to Pallas and bore Zealous emulation and trim-ankled Nike, who was victory in the house. Also, she brought forth Kratos, who is strength, and Bias, who is force. So, wonderful children. These have no house apart from Zeus, nor any dwelling nor path, except that wherein God leads them. But they dwell always with Zeus, the loud thunderer. For so did Styx, the deathless god of ocean, plan on that day when the Olympian lightning god called all the deathless gods to great Olympus, and said that whosoever of the gods would fight with him against the Titans, he would not cast him out from his rights, but each would have the office which he had before amongst the deathless gods. And he declared that he who was not without office or right under Cronos should be raised to both office and rights as it's just. So deathless Styx came first to Olympus with her children through the wit of her dear father, and Zeus honored her and gave her very great gifts, for he appointed her to the great oath of the gods, and her children to live with him always. And as he promised, so he performed fully unto them all, but he himself mightily reigns and rules. So, when Cronos or time dethrones heaven or Uranus, he hides under the ground or under cover, right? He's like, they say he's the first to be minded for this work, right? And that he's the first one to work. What's to work is this, again, it's this force times distance. And he's the first to be minded for this work, that Earth has been covered by Uranus, this equal day and night, right? It's equally spread, and it's marked by the birth of these megalithic structures, and that time is kept then, right? And from here, with geometry, right? It's the geometry and the time. With the straightening of the Earth, you have this basic economics, right? So how much energy or work per unit area of land, right? If you know the area or land mass of your country through the geometry, right? And you can shape it and make more arable land through plows and stuff. And then irrigation, you can start to form a rough idea of the output of the country, right, and its wealth. And this is economics, right? We know economics. Work is synonymous with like energy in physics. So eventually Zeus grows up and he fights Cronos with the help of the Cyclopes and the 100-handers, right? We understand this is the Titan War. So let's read about the Titan War from Hesiod's Theogony. But when first their father was vexed in his heart with Obriarius and Cotus and Gaius, he bound them in cruel bonds, because he was jealous of their exceeding manhood and comeliness and great size, and he made them live beneath the wide path earth, where they were afflicted, being set to dwell under the ground at the end of the earth at its great borders, in bitter anguish for a long time, and with great grief at heart. But the son of Cronos and the other deathless gods, whom rich-haired Rhea bore from union with Cronos, brought them up to the light at earth's avising, for she herself recounted all things to the gods fully, for how with these they might gain victory and a glorious cause to vaunt themselves. For the Titan gods, and as many as sprang from Cronos, had long been fighting together in stubborn war with heart-grieving toil, the lordly Titans from high and up, but the gods, giver of good, whom rich-haired Rhea bore in union with Cronos from Olympus, so they with bitter wrath were fighting continually with one another at that time for 10 full years. And the hard strife had no close or end for either side, and the issue of the war hung evenly balanced. But when he had provided those three with all things fitting, nectar and ambrosia, which the gods themselves eat, when their proud spirit revived within them, all after they had fed on nectar and delicious ambrosia, then it was that the Father of men and gods spoke amongst them, Hear me, bright children of earth and heaven, that I may say what my heart within bids me. A long while now have we, who are sprung from Cronos and the Titan gods, fought with each other every day to get victory and to prevail. But show your great might and unconquerable strength in the face of the Titans in bitter strife. For remember our friendly kindness, and from what sufferings you are come back to the light from your cruel bondage under misty gloom through our counsels. So that speech by Zeus is kind of like, it's like Moses, when Moses gives a speech when all the Israelites want to give up, right, and they have to fight the Amalekites. And so continue on. So he said, and blameless Cotus answered him again, Divine One, you speak that which we know well. No, even of ourselves we know that your wisdom and understanding is exceeding, that you became a defender of the deathless ones from chill doom, and through your devising we have come back again from the murky gloom and from our merciless bonds, enjoying what we looked not for, Lord, Son of Kronos. And so now with fixed purpose and deliberate counsel we will aid your power in dreadful strife, and will fight against the Titans in hard battle. So he said, and the gods, giver of good things, applauded when they heard his word, and their spirit longed for war even more than before, and they all, both male and female, stirred up hated battle that day, the Titan gods and all that were born of Kronos, together with those dread, mighty ones of overwhelming strength, whom Zeus brought up to the light from Erebus beneath the earth. 100 arms sprang from the shoulders of all alike, and each had 50 heads growing from the shoulders upon stout limbs. These then stood against the Titans in grim strife, holding huge rocks in their strong hands, and on the other part of the Titans eagerly strengthened their ranks, and both sides at one time showed the work of their hands and their might. The boundless sea rang terribly around, and the earth crashed loudly. Wide heaven was shaken and groaned, and high Olympus reeled from its foundation under the charge of the undying gods, and a heavy quaking reached dim Tartarus, and the deep sound of their feet, and the fearful onset of their hard missiles. So then they launched their grievous shafts upon one another, and the cry of both armies as they shouted reached to starry heaven, and they met together with great battle cry. So the Titan War is this kind of evenly matched right side, that we know this as tension or strain, and then the Maki or whatever, the machine, is defined as battle, right? That is MACHY is, well, it's battle in Greek. So I'd argue we can look at it like a strain machine or a tension field. That Maki could understood as a machine or a field that's like in this grid or schematic of a design that comes before the invention, right? An invention is equal part imaginary as it is real. So it's like more than 90% of inventions, right, never leave the brain of people, and then maybe like 10% end up, on the back of a napkin. You just kind of ballparking it, and then maybe 1 in a million of these like ideas people have changes the world, right? So I say it's tension, right? It's like, because like the war, they are in a close combat. It's like evenly side on both sides are equal but opposite. They repel each other, or they put in tension on the middle, right? The Psychopathes and 100-handers are held, well, they're held under the Titans in physical space by Kronos in the beginning, right? And after, Rhea brings them up, and then Zeus allies with them. So it's like hypotenuse. Hypotenuse means under tension or under the Titans, right? That the Psychopathes are under the Titans. And of course, hypotenuse is important with respect to trigonometry and geometry and just mathematics in general, right? The hypotenuse being the largest side of a right triangle. And again, the Psychopathes and 100-handers are opposite the strain. They're opposite the Titans, right? They're on the opposite side, and then they're pulled. They're on the then they're at the bounds of the earth too. The opposite, but then they're also right next to Rhea, that they come up from the earth. In addition, the Titan War lasts 10 years, and then year 9 is like at the end of it that we come in. It's like the Trojan War, and then there's 3 Psychopathes, and then 1 is also mentioned in the lines, right? The actual word for 1. So you have like these numbers 1, 3, 9, and 10, right? And they're all important with respect to the Titan War. So I say, so it's like if you have 1 squared plus 3 squared, it equals 9 squared, which of course is 10. No. Right. 1 squared is 1. 3 squared is 9. And then you add these together, you get 10, right? Which is, again, this is like this a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? And what's c squared? Well, it's like, what's the square root of 10? It's not quite pi. I don't think this is like an approximate of pi, but it could be. It could be like this approximate of pi. But it could just be that, well, it was just a well-known like angle, right? There's a well-known angle, and then this is something that like the Illuminati is associated with this compass, this right angle, right? The tension machine, or the Titan War, the Titans are put at the ends of the earth in time itself as well, right? When it's over, Zeus puts the Titans at the end of the earth, and which is, of course, this is like power, right? Zeus moves the Titans to the end of the earth. He moves them with force over a distance, and then he puts time underneath, right? He puts time He divides by time, so it's like power, right? And it's like these titans of industry, or these megaliths, the pyramids, they stand the test of time, right? They're there over time. And then the cyclopes are the ones who guard them, right? They're the one who built them. Power is the force times distance, right? So it's over time, and it's energy or force is the same as the tension, right? Force is a tension. And it's moved over a distance, okay? That's power. Zeus gains power. He displays power by winning the Titan War, right? He's more powerful. So let's read Hesiod's Theogony. Then Zeus no longer held back his might, but straight his heart was filled with fury, and he showed forth all his strength. From heaven and from Olympus he came immediately, hurling his lightning bolts. The bolts flew thick and fast from his strong hand, together with thunder and lightning, whirling in awesome flame. The life-giving earth crashed around and burning, and the vast wood crackled loud with fire all about. All the land seethed, and the ocean streams, and the unfruitful sea. The hot vapor lapped round the earth-born Titans. Flame unspeakable rose to the bright upper air. The flashing glare of the thunderstone and lightning blinded their eyes, for all that they were strong. Astounding heat seized chaos, and to see with eyes and to hear the sound with ears, it seemed as if the earth and wide heaven above came together, for such a mighty crash would have arisen if earth were being hurled to ruin, and heaven from on high were hurling her down. So great a crash was there while the gods were meeting together in strife. Also the winds brought rumbling earthquake and dust storm, thunder and lightning, and the lurid thunderbolt, which are the shafts of great Zeus, and carried the clangor and the war cry into the midst of the two hosts. A horrible uproar of terrible strife arose. Mighty deeds were shown in the battle inclined. But until then they kept at one another and fought continually in cruel war. And amongst the foremost Codos, Briareus, and Gaius, insatiate for war, raised fierce fighting. 300 rocks, one upon another, they launched from their strong hands, and overshadowed the Titans with their missiles, and hurled them beneath the wide path earth, and bound them in bitter chains, when they had conquered them by their strength for all their great spirit, as far beneath earth as heaven is above earth. For so far it is from earth to Tartarus, for a brazen anvil falling down from heaven, 9 nights and days would it reach the earth upon the 10th, and again a brazen anvil falling from earth, 9 nights and days would reach Tartarus upon the 10th. Round it runs a fence of bronze, and night spreads in triple line all about it like a necked circlet, while above grows the roots of the earth and unfruitful sea. So reading further, thereby the counsel of Zeus, who drives the clouds, the Titan gods are hidden under misty gloom in a dank place where are the ends of the huge earth. And they may not go out, for Poseidon fixed gates of bronze upon it, and a wall runs all around it on every side. There Gaius, Codos, and the great-souled Abrarius lives, trusty wanderers of Zeus who holds the ages, and there all in their order are the sources and ends of gloomy earth, and misty Tartarus, and the unfruitful sea, and starry heaven, loathsome and dank, which even the gods abhor. It is a great gulf, and it once a man were within the gates, he would not reach the floor until a whole year had reached its end, but cruel blast upon would carry him this way and that, and this marvel is awful even to the deathless gods. There stands the awful home of murky night, wrapped in dark clouds. Right, so Kronos so the Titans and Kronos are buried, or they're at the farthest ends of the earth, right? That Zeus, is, through his power, has moved them this huge distance, and it's under time, right? That Kronos is he's been put under the earth, right? That he's put underneath, that they're dividing by the time. And then we also, when we talk about Kronos, we talk about like crypto or cryptic, or these megaliths, right? And that's what we associate today with the pharaohs are buried beneath these huge mounds, or these huge pyramids, right there in these sarcophagus, and they're kind of like they're like in this murky, dank, dark, right? And that they're in these huge shafts and stuff. And also, you see, same thing with like Agamemnon, like Schliemann, the German guy, he went and dug up all these people's graves, right? And he found all these treasure, right? So it's probably something like this, right? When you read this, that you're talking about these old rulers in the past, that we're talking about these huge megaliths, right? And then they would get buried underneath, right? They would build these things, and that's what power is, right? To be able to move all this earth and over time, right?